Okay, and we are back for another study video. I have to admit, I've been tremendously productive this last week, live streaming my studying. So that's been good. I am Maggie. If you're new here, I am a third year doctoral student studying for my comprehensive exams as well as coursework and my graduate assistantship. I think now I'm going to focus on my assistantship and getting through some transcriptions. I have 8 more I want to get done today, and then I'll see how I'm feeling from there. Yeah, 8's a little ambitious. I don't know if I could do. We'll play it by ear as my studying goes. So typically, if you're new here, if you're returning, welcome, and thanks for coming back to study with me. But I usually study in 45-minute to 60-minute increments and then take a break in between those. After every 2 cycles, I usually take a longer break, but all of that is just kind of tentative. So if you are tuning in to study with me, I hope you have a very productive few sessions. I'm not sure how long this one will last, probably 2 hours, but let's get settled in and start studying. All right, it looks like we have wrapped up our first session of video 3, I think. Yes. So this is the third live stream for today, and we just got through another hour. If you're on a roll and want to keep working, by all means. Otherwise, I am going to take a little bit of a break. And someone in the chat brought up a really, really important question, which I personally struggle with myself. So, being that I want this platform to kind of hopefully develop into some sort of small virtual community of people who are interested in learning and talking about strategies and such on what works and what doesn't, I think this is a perfect question, and I wrestle with it myself. And so the topic was procrastination and how to navigate that. For those of you who are not familiar with I believe it's called the I'm probably butchering what it's actually called, but the Pomodoro, different timing techniques have really, really helped me get into cycles. When I first started studying and using timers, I would study for 25 minutes and then I would take 5 minutes break and try to get through about 10 sessions of those within a day. And then over the course of time, I've increased it to 45 to 60 minutes of intensive studying, and then I take longer breaks. But that was over the course of 5 years. So it's definitely been a gradual increase. And if other people have thoughts on how to navigate procrastination, please feel free to throw those in the chat. And even after we're live streaming, I would love to hear how you navigate struggling to get motivated. How do I stop procrastination? On top of the timing options that I've mentioned, I really try to break each task down into manageable goals. And so if I had my calendar nearby, so you'll see, that, for example, each one of these weeks is a comps question, and then I kind of break down how I approach each comps question. So there's a smaller, manageable task per day, and I try to assign a allotted amount of time to that. So if I think something will take 2 hours, then I'll block out 2 hours. And if it takes me 30 minutes or 3 hours, then I note that so I know how long it actually took. From what I've learned in my program in terms of procrastination, I guess my first question would be, do you see the application of your individual daily work on a larger scale? For me, I really struggle with seeing how, especially during a pandemic, seeing how my research and creativity and creative problem solving, how that fits into everyday society. At a basic level, we know that creativity and creative problem solving are very, very correlated with critical thinking and enhanced performance. And so considering my research topic and seeing how I could make it marketable outside of the academic world, that has helped me a little bit. But I definitely struggle with seeing the value of my work, especially with it not being tangible and everyday life. I mean, I don't feel like the world would change maybe at all if I was or wasn't studying what I am. But last week it kind of clicked that I don't enjoy working on my comps often. Very rarely, if at all. I think I get excitement from getting it over with versus really digging into it. But there are times where there are connections. But taking a step back, I realized that I have to do this work every day to get past comps and to perform well. And even though I question if I want to advance my program on a weekly basis and have for the past 5 years, regularly, honestly considering if higher ed is for me, I know that in potential careers that I want to seek out after graduation, that having a PhD in a related field will remove a ceiling that I likely will run into if I don't have this degree. And I just made that connection this past week. And so that's given me a lot of motivation and helped with my procrastination, because while I don't want to do it, and there are a lot of reasons why I don't think my work is tremendously valuable, insert imposter syndrome, I do see how it can benefit my future. And right now it's just gotten to a point that I'm ready to get my coursework done, get my comps done, just to move forward, partially because the stress is so crippling. And I have not been able to find a solution that alleviates the anxiety other than doing the work I don't want to do. So I guess anxiety is also fueling me. But I would encourage people to just recognize this situation that we're in, recognizing that a pandemic is not a typical time in life, that if you're grieving, if you have lost friends or loved ones, I know that definitely has been the case for me. In this past year, I've lost a lot of people for various reasons, COVID related and not. That for me presented as procrastination because I was grieving and I simply couldn't focus. And that's okay. That grieving, life is going to happen if I was studying or not. And so I really had to learn how to draw the line between I don't want to study today and I can't study today. And in those really difficult times, finding the days that I just didn't want to study, but I could study, those almost became the exciting days, because the days that I couldn't study, I did feel guilty, but I knew it wasn't going to yield anything meaningful if I tried to do a really demanding task. And on top of that, I've also learned how to be a great procrastinator. If I know I'm not going to do work in this next hour, I'm going to do something fun that I enjoy and then try again in the next hour. I have given up. Easier said than done. I totally recognize that. But I have given up sitting on the couch and feeling terrible about myself, knowing that I should study while I'm not studying, and letting that completely consume my entire day. From that point, I realized that my deep work, this idea of deep work and really being immersed in whatever field you're in, whatever occupation you're in, that is gone for me since the pandemic started. Just all of the external factors that are causing stress. I know that I can't work as deeply as I want to, and that's okay. I don't know how to be the best graduate student in a pandemic. I don't know. It's completely uncharted territory. And so recognizing that, but also recognizing that maybe I'll get a second wind in an hour. Maybe I don't want to study because I haven't had enough sleep. Maybe I haven't given myself the amount of time to do things that I actually enjoy, and everything on my plate right now is work that I need to do versus what I want to do. And so most Monday mornings, I want to sit down and really get into my work. But there are a lot of Mondays where I don't feel like it. And I can't, after trying, I can't get into it. And I've given myself permission to take those times. And if I'm going to procrastinate, I'm going to procrastinate really, really well and do something that brings me a lot of joy instead of feeling guilty that I can't focus. So that's how I've tried to navigate procrastination. I'm sure it's very, very different for a lot of people, and it probably varies depending on your field or what you're studying or where you work. But I would question if it's something you're still interested in. And if it is, then what times work best for you? I know that I work best in the mornings, and by about 2 or 3, pandemic or not, I'm ready to stop. But especially with comps right now, I know I could, but the cost versus the benefit, I need to get everything done on my to-do list today because I will be tremendously anxious if I don't, and then I'm not going to sleep well, and it'll kind of roll over into the next day. But if I didn't have my comprehensive exams this semester, I would definitely be taking time off when I'm done. And I would take that time to prioritize my life in the work-life balance versus struggling with guilt. And I've been in grad school for 5 years now. I got my master's in cognitive and social processes the first 2 years I was in, and then I entered into the doc program I'm in currently, and I've been in that program for 3 years. And across that time period, I have become very, very familiar with grad school guilt and the weight that's associated with that. But I guess the point of all of this is I'd ask yourself why you don't want to do your work. If you just don't want to do it, that's a perfectly good answer. And I'm confident that you will be able to navigate that. If today is not the day, well, then tomorrow. I personally can't plan out too far because I get really overwhelmed. If I decide, okay, I'm studying for 4 hours every day, and then I miss a day, I do not roll over those 4 hours into the next day because that's just not realistic or sustainable for me. I know there are people who can do that, but I really want this platform to be an opportunity to talk about how I experience higher ed and I don't need to grind or put in 10-hour days just aren't productive for me. And if I can get done in 6 hours what I would have gotten done spread across 10 hours, because 4 of those hours are just me staring and trying to work, but knowing that I'm not going to get anything done, then I work 6 hours. If I know 2 hours is all I've got today, well, then I'm going to make 2 hours work for me. If I don't want to work at all, I do try to put in 15 to 20 minutes. Typically, I get hooked and then keep working. But if I don't, at least I put in 15 minutes. And coming back the next day, if I don't feel like it, I'll try to do another 20 minutes. And I'm at least making some progress, even if it's much smaller than what I wanted it to be. I am making progress. And I think a lot of graduate students wrestle with perfectionism and being type A. And I think that's a really helpful characteristic to get into graduate school, to pursue a career in this field. But at the same time, I've had to let go of that, because I knew anything can be enhanced, any paper can be fixed and improved, regardless of how much time I have. So, yes, it's not a reflection on me or my abilities if I take 5 hours or 2 hours to work on an assignment and submit it. And if I get less than a perfect score, that's okay. I recognize that graduate school is very, very, very challenging for a lot of people in various ways. It can be really isolating. It can be completely overwhelming. I have had a lot of physical pain, and I'll just be honest here. The tension associated with graduate school and how that presents physically leads to a lot of physical pain, just because I'm so unbelievably stressed. And I've gotten to a point that I don't want to live like that anymore. So if that means taking a B, I take the B. If that means missing an assignment, that's pushing my perfectionism a little too much. But I am still on the road to learning when enough is enough. And I think I'm getting a little closer to figuring out what that means for me. That's one of my major critiques of being in academia, is that I don't think I've ever come across a professor or a student in higher ed who has returned from a break saying that they were, saying that they were happy with the work that they did, or that they were well rested. I think breaks typically are used for catching up or researching your own personal interests, and they're not an actual break. There are not vacation days as a graduate student, at least not in my program. And I've never heard of like vacation days or personal days or time you can take off that's kind of built into what would be like a benefits package. So not having those options kind of creates this it's a strange little bubble of being in your mid to later 20s likely, and potentially having friends and family progressing through life at a different rate, and being in this weird, at least I found myself in a weird position where I didn't feel like I had made it, and I still don't feel like I've really arrived, but I don't know what arrived means for me. But also wanting to be able to leave a job at 5 and to leave it there. That has been the carrot in front of me for the last few years, trying to just find the value in my work and when is enough for me. And yes, so all of that, I kind of factor into procrastination and why I may not want to work. If it is health or mental health related, I definitely give myself grace. If I don't feel like it, then I would advise to be a great procrastinator. If you're going to take that time, then don't waste it feeling guilty or bad about yourself. I would not climb into that imposter syndrome pool or the guilty pool. I really, really love thrifting. So if I know today's not the day that I'm going to go have an amazing day searching for something versus sitting on my couch, likely napping a lot because I just don't want to deal with all the criticism I'm giving myself. So yeah, that's how I try to deal with it. Again, if anyone else has other thoughts or tips or techniques, feel free to drop them in the comments. That's why this platform exists. I created this channel because I could not make myself sit in my seat. I'd work for 20 minutes and just couldn't stay seated. I didn't want to work. But now that I'm recording live, I know that there are potentially 1 or 2 people in the world knowing that I'm not working, and for some reason, that makes me stay in my seat. I also have been practicing better posture because people are watching. So if recording yourself or just having FaceTime or Zoom or some video capturing screen open and being able to see that, oh, I can see that I'm not working, maybe that would help. Streaming really helps me. I think it develops that community that I have a community, but my community and the dynamic has changed so dramatically in the last year that there are some days where I go to the grocery store to talk to people I don't know because I just don't have the exposure to people. And empirically, we know that having a good sense of community and belonging and support is important for any higher level activities that you plan to do. Having somewhere safe to live and having consistent and healthy food to eat and having a community that supports you and that you feel supported in, those are all really, really big factors when considering overall well-being. So yeah, I hope that was kind of helpful to anyone. If none of those techniques work for you, I'm sure there are thousands and thousands of techniques out there. Oh, I don't know where my clipboard went. Now I've kind of gotten to the point where not studying for comps for more than 2 days in a row is not okay for me. It just makes me really, really nervous and really anxious, and it's not worth feeling terrible. I'd rather work for a couple hours than feel terrible. But some days I really, really don't want to read articles, and that's perfectly okay. Then I will draw a concept map, or I will color out the topics and change the format in which I am approaching the task. Okay, this break is going to be a lot longer than usual. I will tell you about self-regulated learning. So, yeah, I have a list of like, how could I change the way I approach this task? If I have to read an article, I could read it and annotate it, which is kind of the cut and dry way I approach it. Or I could, there really is no way of getting out of reading, or at least skimming. Graduate school skimming, a skill that you must learn. Maybe I will break it down. I really love outlining. I'll break it down into sections. Maybe I will just focus on certain pieces. Maybe I will make it into a PowerPoint. Maybe I will draw it out into a concept map and use all of my different colors. From research, we know that as many cues as you can connect to information, the better you are able to remember them. What else will I do? Notion is a great option. That's kind of a different format that I enjoy using. I really enjoy lecturing. So maybe I'll throw the content into a PowerPoint and lecture to my rabbit or something like that. But I found that changing the format in which I approach a topic has really helped me to navigate procrastination as well. So self-regulation. This will be my last point, and then I will go back to studying, and you can go back to studying. So one of my research interests is self-regulated learning, which essentially is the self-monitoring of your work on any given task. So let's say that I have a math test coming up, and the approach that a researcher named Zimmerman utilizes, and I think across a lot of the self-regulated learning models, takes this idea that there is a planning phase, which is also referred to as the forethought phase, and then the performance phase, which happens during the task that you're working on, so during the math test, and then the self-reflection phase after the math test, what worked well, what didn't, and seeing the outcome that you received, where do you think adjustments could be made, and then taking that into consideration and starting again on maybe the next math test or the next math problem, or the next time you try to hit a 3-pointer, or the next time you try a recipe. What did I do before? What planning did I use? How did I study? How did I gather the ingredients? Did I measure them? How did I approach the basket? And then while working on your math homework or the recipe or that shot, how did those strategies play out? Did I have to adjust them at all? Did I need to adapt anything? And then regardless of the outcome, if you were happy with the outcome or not, how could you adjust it to make that task more efficient? How could you adjust it to increase performance if that's what you're looking for, or increase comprehension, understanding, your skills, anything like that? And so bringing that back to procrastination, I would really write it out. What do you do to approach the homework assignment you don't want to do? What do you do to approach the test you don't want to take or the class you don't want to attend, or any task really at all. How do you plan for it? What resources do you think would be useful when approaching it? How do you feel about yourself? Do you feel like you're capable of approaching it? If not, why? If you Google Zimmerman's self-regulated learning model, it's all over Google. And I think that's one of the more intuitive models, that it's cyclical and there are cute little infographics and such. But maybe you're not happy with the outcomes you've received previously on, let's say, a test. And I genuinely live by this model. On all of my comprehensive exam questions, I have a section talking about how am I going to approach this question? What do I think I need? How am I feeling? And then when I'm working on it, what's working, what's not? How am I adapting? What do I need to change? And then looking back once I've finished a question, considering, am I happy with how this turned out? Also, that gives me a conclusive period where I have to stop working on the question. Do I feel like there are gaps? How do I want to work on my next question? How do I want to change my approach to make my responses better or make my literature search better? So I really do recommend monitoring your learning, because if you are using learning strategies that, let's jump into cognition real quick. If you're using learning strategies that don't enhance retention, if you read a chapter and then to study, reread that chapter, I think a lot of people, regardless of where you are in education, we're not taught how to study. We're not taught how to read textbooks. We're not taught how to take notes. We're not taught how to enhance comprehension. And with all of that, people just kind of figure out what gets them by, and some strategies are better than others. But being that I have a master's in cognition and I am just so passionate about how humans take information in and process it and then store it and retrieve it for future use, I can say that there are a lot of superficial learning strategies that are perpetuated throughout the years of education. If you're in elementary or middle or high school or college or graduate school, there are techniques that are better than others, and that'll save you a lot of time. And maybe that'll make learning and studying more enjoyable. So just for example, a few more superficial learning techniques would be highlighting. If you catch yourself just coloring on your article, your textbooks, things like that, I would really ask you to, I would ask if you are able to summarize individual pages. Do you know what the point of that section is? Could you tell me in one sentence, even though you colored almost three paragraphs or so? That is not encouraging a lot of thought or processing. And so highlighting, I highlight, I have tons of highlighters. I love color coding. While highlighting can be a wonderful, wonderful tool, I would caution you to use it in moderation. Make sure you're highlighting the points that are deepening your understanding. But Maggie, I don't know anything about biology. I would encourage you to outline the chapter then, the article then. I started doing that in undergrad just because I really enjoyed organization and cognition, but at the same time I do that in my graduate courses because sometimes the reading load is just not realistic for me. And at least I know what the topics were in the 150 pages I had to read in 1 week if I can't actually get through them. So outlining and taking those smaller chunks and trying to maybe give yourself more time to study. We know that studying in smaller segments across a longer period of time, it's called it's called spaced learning. Interleaving is when you work on a really difficult task, whatever that means for you, and then to take a break, maybe you check your emails, or you email someone back, or you read a light fiction book that you're working on, something that is still making you think a little bit, but not anywhere near the degree that you were working at. So for example, I am reviewing data and transcribing interviews, and that takes a lot of my attention. But on breaks, I sometimes like to jump rope because it's genuinely just fun for me. Sometimes I'll read. I try to do something that isn't sitting on TikTok, for example, because I tend to get sucked in. Social media, I try to avoid on my breaks. I live on a busy road. So interleaving is another good study strategy to balance out. This is really intensive work that needs all of my focus, and I can take a break, but it is still moving me towards a few things I need to accomplish for the day. I also know that some people write out like the 3 top things to do. I don't know if a lot of you are to-do listers, but I used to make giant to-do lists and then just felt like a complete failure when I couldn't get through them because there aren't 48 hours in a day, Maggie. So yes, I would say keep your expectations for yourself realistic. Space out your studying. That has been empirically proven to help learning. Active recall, quiz yourself, and don't let yourself check the answer before you answer the question. For example, if you're using flashcards, another great tool, but if you ask yourself the question and flip it over before you actually generate that response, then you're not really quizzing yourself. And a lot of times there's no one there to check if you're actually quizzing yourself or not. That's your personal fight with yourself, your own accountability. So if you catch yourself doing that, then, I mean, you're free to do whatever you'd like, but the depth of that processing is not as substantial as if you were actually making yourself generate the response and thinking about it before you flip the flashcard over. That's why I really enjoy the app Notion, because there's a toggle feature. So I can write out my questions and then open the toggle and it'll show me the response, but I can also close that. So I make sure I'm not just reading through the answers and questions, that I actually need to take some time to recall. And so I'll be doing that to prepare for my comps. I'll also be generating PowerPoints, and I'm going to essentially host little TED Talks, Maggie Talks, about the different topics. I probably won't be posting them on here because there's security around the test questions, but I will be presenting those to people who are really close to me just to practice actively recalling the information that I need to know, presenting it in a way that other people can understand. I probably will throw it into a PowerPoint because then I can add a little more. I can add graphics. I could add transitions if those are helpful for you. I really like bare bone PowerPoints, but yeah, just the more you work with the information that you're studying, the better. I think that belief is consistent across most learning fields, but it took me a while to be honest with myself if I'm actually studying or if I'm reading but not retaining. And if that's the case, I'm kind of just wasting my own time. So go do something fun, or if you are in a groove studying, we need to adjust something. And that's kind of coming back to self-regulation and just monitoring anything you want to improve upon. So yes, that's a lot of my thoughts on procrastination and graduate school and studying and struggles. I completely validate everyone's struggles in higher ed. I understand. It's definitely challenging in different ways. I also validate anyone else's struggles, but personally, I can't really speak to other career paths because I've been in school my whole life. So that's the tea. I am actually going to go make a little bit more tea and then wrap up this transcription. I gave myself what I know to be an unrealistic amount of work to do today. And I have at least gotten to a place where I know it's unrealistic and I'm not going to get it done. And I'm not going to feel bad about it because I know I wouldn't do a great job if I tried to push through the amount of work I want to do. I would just have to come back and redo it tomorrow. So I almost having my PhD in education and essentially being a professional learner still have a long, long way to go in refining my learning skills. But I hope some of this was helpful. I would really recommend Googling Zimmerman's, I think it's 2001, self-regulated learning model. That's really helpful, but also looking up different learning strategies that maybe you don't think of because you've been doing things a certain way and it's worked for you, but now you're really avoiding those techniques. So that is that. Oh, good, my microphone was on. So all of this was heard to some capacity, but yeah, those are my thoughts on that. If I come across those different learning techniques and such, they're in a binder over there, as well as a lot of other articles. But yeah, I'll share those sometime on one of my breaks about deeper learning strategies compared to more superficial learning strategies that a lot of people just were never taught and figured it out themselves. And that is definitely admirable, but then you kind of wrestle between effort and time if you don't know certain strategies exist and you've gotten by reading and rereading things. Yes, so I would love to help in that capacity. I'm going to go make tea now, and yeah, if you listen to that tidbit, thank you. If you have been continuing to work on, congratulations. Yeah, so I'm going to grab tea. I'm going to finish this transcription. I'll come back, finish this transcription, maybe revise my plan for today because it's not realistic and I have achieved a lot of what I wanted to do today. And it usually takes less time than I think. But yeah, I don't want to reflect back on today and think, I only got half of my to-do list done because I made a bad to-do list. There are only so many hours in a day, and there are a lot of additional, unique, external stressors associated with this time that we're living in. And if you're watching this video not in 2021, I'm sure there are also unique challenges to your time. But that's what we are, that's what we're wrestling with right now. So I hope that was helpful. I'm going to go grab some tea. I will be back in a couple. But if I essentially learn about how to learn. So if you have other questions, I'd love to throw them into these study videos, and maybe I can make a note in the description. So if you miss me talking about like more superficial and more deep learning strategies, I'll just drop that into the description of whatever study video I talk about that. And then I could probably timestamp that too, so you don't have to watch 2+ hours of me reading to get to the part that you want. So yeah, I will be right back. Hope that was helpful, and happy studying. Okay, and one last thought on that topic. Studying environments are very, very important. If you're trying to study in a loud place, that's at least that doesn't work for me. I live with earplugs in my ears, anywhere I go because it makes almost anywhere a study space for me. And I usually turn the noise canceling feature on my headphones because I can't have noise. But my rabbit. I find myself to be a lot more productive when I have, like, this is my workspace. And when I don't want to be in my workspace, I leave my workspace and I don't do work. Sometimes I want to go to a coffee shop when there isn't a pandemic, and I'll study there for a set amount of time, and knowing that I'm in this place to complete this task really helps me to stay focused. Pre-pandemic, I was doing that a lot. I would alternate between coffee shops or it's hard to see my screen when I'm outside in the sun, but if you have a porch or you can find somewhere shaded or you don't care that it's a little tricky to see your screen in the sun, going outside, libraries, coffee shops, if you need Wi-Fi or if you don't need Wi-Fi. If you don't need Wi-Fi, I would, if I needed to read articles, I'd download the articles and then I'd go hang out in my hammock. And there is no Wi-Fi. So I couldn't check my email 500 times because I couldn't connect. So unless I wanted to accept the fact that I went somewhere to not do the thing I wanted to do and be on my phone instead, that was helpful. I wouldn't always get through the article or the articles I was hoping to read in that set amount of time, but I was much more productive than I would have been not doing that. So I would encourage you to try to find a consistent workspace that works for you. And that doesn't mean that it needs to be like, I'm very productive in the library, and I'm very productive in a coffee shop, and I'm very productive sometimes on my couch when I really focus, but primarily I am here as my videos show. And when I'm here, I know it's time to work. And when I'm not working, I leave this space. I can't do it. I would really caution people from trying to study in their beds. If you can do it, I can't do it. Because then it's like your office is your bed, but you sleep in your bed, and the boundary between like non-work time and work time kind of gets really fuzzy. And yeah, I can't do that balance. I think, did I do that in undergrad? There were probably times where I did homework, but consistently I try to have a workspace. And if I'm not doing work, avoiding that workspace. And if I am doing work, being in that workspace. So that is the last thing that came to mind. But yeah, I'm going to wrap up this transcription and then see how things are going. I hope you have a productive session. Okay, so I think I'm gonna cut this session a little short. I know we've only been working for about 20 minutes, but as I talked about, I know when I need to take a break, and I need to take a break right now. As my parting words of wisdom, one more technique that I found to be really useful when trying to balance work and life. I recognize that when I take time for myself and take breaks and exercise, and I really enjoy cooking and doing things that I like, when I procrastinate intentionally and well, my work actually turns out to be better and I can do it more efficiently. So I would keep that in mind. But if you wrestle with taking breaks, for example, if you are working with anyone and they ask if you're free to do something when you had planned to take an intentional break, I would encourage you to call those breaks meetings. During my classes, when someone asks if I can stay after or work on a project or run an errand for them, but I have a break time for me planned, I will say, sorry, I've got a meeting. If I'm going on a bike ride and a supervisor wants to know if I'm free at this time, I mean, obviously, depending on what it is, can I move the bike ride? But I think each individual needs to find the line. If my supervisors are watching, hi. When I prioritize personal time, my work is better. I know that. But yeah, a lot of people try to take time for themselves, but I think at least in my academic community, saying, no, sorry, I was going to go watch YouTube videos, it just doesn't have like really, you could just do that anytime, Maggie. Why can't you? I have a meeting. I have a YouTube meeting. Don't say YouTube. I have a meeting. I can't because I have a meeting. And time for myself are just as important as meetings because I know they positively impact my work. So if you need to write it in your calendar that you are having a meeting with yourself to get out of that guilt, and it took practice. I felt like I was lying to a lot of people, but I need time to myself. I need to introvert. I need to sit and do mindless tasks throughout the day so that I can be productive when it's time to work and I get to dictate when those times are. And no one argues if you say you have a meeting. They usually don't ask who it's with. I have a meeting. Can you do this after work? I can't because I have a meeting. It's a really, really beautiful thing. I don't remember where I heard it, but it has dramatically improved my quality of life because it allows me to say no in a way that people don't question my dedication to my work, which shouldn't be the case anyway, but it is, and we save the world one day at a time. So that's another problem to tackle at another time. But if you need that outlet to say, I'm not working, call it a meeting, an indefinite meeting with yourself. I don't know how long it's going to last. I don't know how long this break is going to last for me. I might take 2 hours. I do need to do a little more work. Excuse me. Tonight, but maybe I try not to work past a certain time, but maybe I'll take 3 hours. I don't know. I feel it out when I'm in a good groove. I hang out with it when I'm not. I just accept that. is how it is, and my breaks are meetings with myself, so I get to do whatever I want, which is great. It's a beautiful thing. Excuse me. Part of me feels a little bad that I'm cutting this short, but Maggie, the reason we are making these videos is to enhance your studying, and we are also learning how to balance personal time and work time. I just finished a transcription and I really don't want to look at another one right now. So I'm going to go do something else. But if you are following along, I hope you had a great study session. If you're wrestling to get in the groove today, that's totally fine. I hope you found my thoughts to be interesting, hopefully useful. If not, thanks for listening along. If you have different study techniques or strategies that you find work really, really well for you, again, I'd love to foster a little virtual learning community. And yeah, feel free to share those. We are all about positive vibes here, avocados and optimism. So yeah, I will leave you with that, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Got lag. Bye again.